Hey lovelies! So I get questions from you guys all the time about the best way to reheat leftovers, especially if you're living without a microwave like me. I know, it's crazy. I cook in a kitchen with no microwave. But I have managed to make it work, and today I want to share some of my very favorite tips for breathing new life into your leftovers, and dare I say it, it actually makes them really, really tasty. We're going to get started with the most important meal of the day, breakfast, and Elle's current favorite breakfast, French toast. But to be honest, I don't always have time to make fresh French toast in the morning. That being said, I like to make a bunch of French toast during my Sunday meal prep, and what I do is store it in the refrigerator. Then come breakfast, all I have to do is pop it into the toaster, and breakfast is served in like 2 minutes. How great is that? The same thing can be done with homemade waffles and homemade pancakes. They can be stored in the fridge or freezer and then defrosted and cooked in the toaster. Super convenient, just like the kind you buy at the supermarket, except of course, homemade is always better. There you go, guys. Breakfast is served, hot and ready. How great is that? Next, when we're talking about breakfast foods, of course, we need to talk about eggs. I will say, as a general rule, reheating eggs is typically a no-no. Things like scrambled eggs and fried eggs don't typically reheat very well. But boiled eggs are the exception to this rule. One thing you don't want to do is actually reheat them in the microwave because they can explode. A better way to do it is actually to take your boiled egg, like so, put it in a heat-safe mug like this, and then add some boiling water on top. Basically, we're just gonna leave that egg in there for 2 to 3 minutes, and it will reheat perfectly and be ready to be enjoyed. One of the foods I get asked about most often when it comes to reheating leftovers is meat. How do you reheat things like leftover chicken or leftover beef? And there's a couple important things to think about when you are reheating meat. The first thing is, of course, it tends to dry out while it's in the refrigerator overnight or for a few days. So it's really important to add more moisture back into it as you're cooking it. And the second thing is you don't want to overcook it because then you run the risk of drying it out. And one of the ways to avoid that is to make sure that you cut your meat into pieces before you reheat it. So for example, if you've got some chicken breast left over, make sure you slice it thinly before reheating it. That way it'll cook up more quickly and has less of a chance to dry out. I've got my chicken cut into thin slices and I've got a skillet heating up on the stove. To that, I'm going to add a little bit of butter. Now you could do this with any kind of fat, but I of course love the rich flavor of butter. Once that butter is nice and melted, we can get our chicken right into the pan. I'll give it just a quick whirl in that butter, like so. Then to help with the rehydration process, I am going to add a little bit of chicken broth. Once again, you could use water here, but chicken broth just has a little more flavor. Now, I should mention, this is how I reheat chicken just as it is. But if you are looking for new creative ways to use leftover chicken, I have about 1 million ideas on the channel. I will link some in the description box below. Now, of course, once your chicken is fully heated through, it is ready to be enjoyed. But why wouldn't you take this opportunity to add a little more flavor to it? This is the perfect time to add some shallot, a little bit of garlic maybe, some lemon if you have it on hand, or just some fresh herbs like I'm going to do today. A little bit of fresh parsley and some thyme can really go a long way here, as well as some salt and pepper. And there you go, guys. Reheated chicken you can actually get excited about. Next, guys, let's talk about our side dishes. First up, let's talk about how to reheat rice. It's an absolute staple in my house. In fact, every time I'm cooking rice with a meal, I will almost always cook a double batch and then leave some in the refrigerator. One of the best ways to use up leftover rice is actually to make fried rice. And I have a couple amazing variations of fried rice up on the channel. I will link those recipes in the description box below as well. But if you want to just heat your rice up the traditional way, go ahead and get a saucepan heated up over medium heat on the stove. To that, I like to add just a touch of butter. Once my butter is melted, I'll just get my rice into the pan, and then I'm going to add some more moisture because of course the problem with rice is that it tends to dry out when it's stored in the refrigerator. I'm doing this with some chicken broth in this recipe, but you could just as easily use some water. I've done both methods. They both definitely work. The chicken broth also helps to loosen your rice up a little bit so it no longer sticks together. And in just 2 or 3 minutes, you've got hot, steaming, delicious rice that is ready to be served with whatever your main dish is. This very same method, guys, will work with reheating your pasta as well. What's not to love? Next, let's talk potatoes. As a general rule, I always recommend never reheating potatoes in the microwave. You definitely want to reheat them in the oven. So I've got my oven preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm basically just going to lay my potatoes out on a baking sheet. Now, you can reheat these just as they are. They'll get nice and golden and delicious in the oven. But if you want to give them a bit of the royal treatment, go ahead and add just a drizzle of oil, some dried rosemary, a little bit of garlic powder, some salt, some pepper, give them all a zhuzh, and then cover them with some aluminum foil. Get them into the oven for between 10 and 15 minutes, just until they're heated through, then remove the foil and let them cook up for another 10 minutes or so. They'll end up crispy, brown, golden, delicious. Talk about letting your leftovers live again. Finally, my friends, let's talk about everyone's favorite leftover, pizza. Now, I will just be honest, I actually enjoy cold pizza straight from the fridge. But if you are the kind of person who likes to reheat your pizza, I'm going to show you a method that you will absolutely love. In fact, this was shared online a few years ago, and it's so clever, it went completely viral. And I've been using it ever since. It really does make all the difference. What you wanna do is start with a nonstick frying pan on the stove, and you wanna heat it up to medium heat. Then you're just going to place your slice of pizza into the center of the frying pan and cover it with a lid. What happens next is absolute magic. You basically end up with a nice crispy bottom thanks to the heat coming from the burner, and a nice sort of soft melted top thanks to the steam trapped by the lid. Pizza perfection each and every time. Don't believe me, guys? I hope you will try it for yourselves. In fact, I hope you'll try all of the awesome tips in today's video and that you'll no longer feel left overwhelmed by your leftover situation. If you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more tip style videos like this, definitely let me know in the comment section. And if you have any questions you'd like answered, definitely leave those as well. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from.